Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. So it's the end of the weekend and I've had a couple of long days, back-to-back 10-hour days doing some pretty significant yard work. So at this point, I'm kind of just looking to veg out, watch some TV, and take it easy as I turn into the evening. So what I want to talk to you about today is how to break in the production TFK Kydex Sheath. So these Kydex sheaths are made from Extreme Edge Custom Kydex. Now when you look at the actual construction of the TFK T17, it is very regular from knife to knife, but keeping in mind that it is a mid-tech knife. So there's a few things about that. Even though TFK is extremely precise in their overall craftsmanship, there's minor variations from knife to knife. And that's also the case with the sheaths. So as I'm using T17 number 11 as the mold for these sheaths, for the most part, every single one of them is gonna fit just about perfect, but there is a little bit of work that needs to be done. And that's where you come into play. We need to break in these sheaths and we make them just a little bit on the tight side. And that does a couple of things. First is it gives it the overall fit that it needs for the long-term use of the knife. We didn't want to make a sheath that comes out day one that's loose, and then over time as it breaks in, it gets looser and looser and loses its retention. So we make them intentionally tight so that you have the opportunity to break it in yourself. And second, that is the key. The idea that you get to break in your own sheath. It's kind of like a rite of passage. You get the knife, you get the sheath, and over time as you use it more and more, you break it in so that your knife and sheath combination is exactly perfect. And that's just something that you get to enjoy. The process of you breaking in your own sheath is something that you should be able to experience. And so with that, we're going to take a quick look at the difference between the prototype sheath and the final production model, and then we're going to talk about how you go about breaking in this sheath. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to talk about, do me a favor. Stay tuned. So as we get into this and look at the prototype sheath, this sheath is beautiful. There's really nothing wrong with it, but it's the small things that we really have worked extremely hard on. But it's the small things that we've worked extremely hard to perfect in order to get this exactly where it needed to be. So on the prototype sheath, you'll notice that the eyelets aren't quite perfect. The spacing to the edge of the Kydex, not exactly perfect. And even the retention on the back of the knife behind the finger choil, not quite perfect. Now again, a perfectly good sheath, excellent retention overall. This thing isn't going anywhere, but we wanted to do just a little bit better. So the factory sheath is a very refined product. At this point, every single eyelet placed in the exact location it needs to be for a very specific reason, whether it's to help with retention or for the ability to bolt up hardware. This sheath here has all the fit and finish and all the final details that needs to go in so that you can have the best overall carry option and carry experience possible. And so when you look at the prototype sheath at this point, this goes in and out of the sheath quite easy. This has good overall lockup and performs exactly like it should. But I have used this sheath again and again and again. This has a ridiculous amount of use, and that's why it is perfectly broken in. But at this point, we're going to take a look at this final production sheath. And as I go to insert the knife right away, it is ridiculously snug. And that's what I'm talking about. Now, can I get this knife in there? Yeah, sure. It's very snug. And that's what you're gonna find. Now I'm gonna walk you through all the steps on what you need to do to break this in. So let's get to it, and by the end of this, you'll see how perfect this Kydex fits. So the very first thing I'm going to do is remove the hardware. When you get your Kydex sheath, it will be all bolted up with some of this factory hardware. Now this tech lock is quite easy to remove. There is a locking mechanism on this clip, so opening this up and then squeezing and opening this up, you will expose the bolts on the underside. A simple Phillips is going to do the job, so get your Phillips screwdriver, loosen up these bolts just enough. Now you could either simply loosen this to the point where it's still attached or remove it altogether. for this demonstration, I'm simply going to remove the hardware, get it out of the way so that you can really see what's going on here. And so that's the first step. And already as you go to remove the knife, it is a lot easier, and you will already see that putting the knife in is a lot easier. So that's the first thing, is that you're going to be breaking this in without the hardware. And already inserting the knife and removing it, it's already making a difference. So you'll see that once you get this going, it will be a much easier process. Now, if you look, there's already some plastic that's coming off. There's a little bit of plastic from the actual fabrication, and there's a little plastic that's going to come off as you mold your sheath to the knife. But I would suggest that at this point, we actually lubricate the knife, and you may want to do that the very first thing before you even install it into the sheath. The reason being, this does have an acid stonewash finish in this particular case, and even if you had a satin blade, you may want to protect the finish. So what I suggest is before you even put the knife the first time into the sheath, you actually lubricate it, and you can do it one of a couple of ways. I personally like to use frog lube. I like frog lube a lot. It's good to clean your blades. You can also use it on guns and things like that. The reason why I like it, it's a grease and it's also food grade, so it's safe to use if you're using your knife to eat. Now personally, I use all of my knives to eat, so I never use anything like WD-40 or penetrating oil or anything like that. So everything I do is food grade, and that's on purpose. So you could either use this frog lube, or if you don't have this, you could use some simple things like olive oil, vegetable oil, maybe even some coconut oil, something like that. But the thing with the frog lube is it will stay coating the blade really nice, a good even coat all over the entire blade, and as you insert it in and out of the sheath, it will start to leave a little bit of a deposit behind in the sheath as well. And so just getting a little bit of this frog lube here, getting it on this rag. Now I use this rag every time because I don't want to lose product. So this is literally lathered with this frog lube. But just coating the blade good and thorough. Don't skimp on it. Get a nice heavy coat on here. You can't really put too much. And I go very, very heavy with this frog lube. But once I get the blade good and coated, taking the sheath, I then insert the knife. And this is going to do a couple of things. As I take the knife and run it in and out of the sheath, I am depositing just a little bit of that grease, but the grease actually grabs onto some of the little shavings and pulls it out. So if you're careful, as you break in the sheath, you can actually wipe off these little bits of plastic and get them out of the sheath, which is going to help by the end of this. And this is it. For the next little while, just kind of sit there and work the knife in and out just a little bit. And it doesn't take much. You don't necessarily need to draw the knife all the way out. However, like I said, when you do, you get those kind of little bits of plastic and you can just kind of pull them out of there. But you'll notice that after 4, 5, 6 times running the knife in and out, it's already almost perfect. Perfect retention, no rattle at all. This thing's not going anywhere. You can totally trust it. And at this point, it is much easier to draw the knife. So you're just going to do this a number of times. I mean, chill out, watch TV, enjoy your afternoon, just sit on the couch and play with your knife a little bit. But you're just going to sit there and break in the sheath enough to the point where you feel like it's a good, comfortable draw. For me, this is still just a touch on the stiff side, but I'm just going to work it a tiny bit till it gets a little looser, and then we'll go on to the next step. And at this point, I would say it's just about perfect. So that feels really good to me. Didn't take long, 2-3 minutes at the most, and this feels very comfortable. Now it's just a touch stiff, and that's okay. It's exactly where I want it. So for my next step, let's put that hardware back on, and we're going to keep continuing to break in the sheath. And so now I have my hardware all back and bolted up. So looking at it here, you'll see that the actual retention has loosened up just a bit. It's still stiff, but that's a good thing. Now at this point, I'll continue to use this, go through time. I don't need to sit here and break this in anymore. I mean, is it a little bit on the stiff side? Yeah, sure. It's good and firm, but that's okay. It's not dangerous. It's actually getting to the point where it's very comfortable, perfect, absolutely perfect retention. This knife won't go anywhere. No rattle, extremely well fit, perfect retention, and custom so that your personal TFK T17 and your Extreme Edge Custom Kydex Sheath are now a perfect match. And then the very final thing I would do is just actually flush out your sheath. So at this point, there's a little bit of plastic in there. You're not going to hurt this thing. Just flush it out, get all of that out of there. Now you'll notice the drain hole is working perfectly on the sheath, so that is by design. Water just pushing right through, so run the water in both directions. Just flush this thing out, get all that out of there. Now if you really wanted to, you could throw a little bit of dish soap in there, and you could kind of really get some of that material out of there, but I think just flushing it out with some water will do. Let this thing dry, and you're back in business. So alright guys, there you have it, a real quick look at the TFK T17 Extreme Edge Custom Kydex Sheath. Now again, we made this sheath just a little bit tight for the reason that first, I want to make sure that you have the absolute perfect fit for your knife. Second, you have the ability to break this in for yourself. It's kind of fun. You want the ability to play with your knife. You want the ability to have the experience and the ownership experience that comes with a knife like this. And to me, breaking in the sheath is definitely part of the experience. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.